Julian Bashir wants to skip a rock in the Great Link. Garak plays matchmaker, and a Jem'Hadar pulls on Chief O'Brien's chest hairs. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
What's up? What's up?
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Deep Space Nine's final episode of Season 4, Broken Link, directed by our good friend, and by our good friend, I mean that sarcastically, Mr. Les Landau, because I've never met him and because he's probably traumatized by Cirroc and Aron.
He's actually a really good guy. I mean, he's like a fun, smiley type of guy. Only when he's pushed to the far limits does he start to change character. But he's otherwise a really nice guy. Shout out to Les.
Oh, that's awesome. Hope to meet him someday then. Story by George A. Brozak. Not what you thought it was the first time, Cirroc. Teleplay by our good friends, really, Mr. Robert Hewitt Wolf and Ira Stephen Bear. This originally aired June 17th, 1996. Those were the days.
Those were the days, yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Interesting that this story was by somebody else, because this seems like it could have been an in-house written
Felt
story,
like
right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. The fact that somebody submitted this idea, I guess the big thing was, the connection to the link, which I felt like I'd seen before, but it wasn't. It was the Trill episode with Jadzia, where she was kind of, wasn't it?
Yeah, where she goes swimming in the milk or something.
Yeah. So I thought I had seen this before, but then I kind of double checked on that.
Well, Odo has
visited
there.
The
yeah, right. So yeah, there's definitely
but
something
at that
there.
time, it was like a cave. I don't remember it being like this, like the sea, like this giant.
Right. Well, the cave was where they had the officers hidden underground, on this homeworld, on this planet. But yeah, let's definitely talk more about this, because there are definitely a few things there. But before we do, I do want to make sure that we let everybody know to go check us out on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/the7th-rule. Check us out, become part of the team, join in the fun, share it with your friends. You can join us on our show. You can join our awesome monthly roundtables or weekly free-for-alls. Lots of good stuff. Be part of the team and get IMDb credits and credits in the end of every episode. It's really cool stuff. Plus, it helps keep us going. And Cirroc's got a really cool purple light in that lamp. I mean, that's production value, you guys. That's from our patrons. That's from our patrons. But anyway, please check us out on patreon.com/the7th-rule, and please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on all of this content. Anyway, let's have some fun and talk about this episode. That planet, huh? Oh, here's the planet right here, and this was when Odo had his famous nude scene.
Yeah, I'll reserve my nude scene comments for later. I didn't. I was like, somebody cover the guy with a blanket or something. It's like a newborn baby sitting there, but not as cute.
Yeah, but just as vulnerable.
Yeah. But just as vulnerable, yeah. I wondered, like, as I was watching it, I was wondering if, like, they shaved his body for that, because he seemed extra smooth, almost like ET's. But I won't get too far into that.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the things of the founders is they just don't
have body hair.
Yeah, because he never grows a beard or anything like that. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, I was like, wow, he's smooth like that, like literally like a newborn baby. I thought that was interesting. But this episode, like I said, it was kind of, as you described the story being somebody submitting the story. It seems like this is something that they could have easily had just, you know, whipped up themselves. It wasn't too far out there as like a one-off episode where it's telling this really ridiculous kind of story. But
Right.
I get the main gist of what was probably pitched because we've had a lot of writers on that have talked about their pitches and how the writers just attach themselves to one concept of that pitch and maybe just one idea of it that they really extract and they go take that and run with it. But maybe the idea originally was Odo becomes human, right? I mean, it could be reduced to that.
Yeah, that's my thinking too. And this is just a guess, but we have heard, many, many times over that Star Trek was always very generous in how they hand out credits. Not saying that people didn't earn those writing credits, but that the writers would basically say, hey, if we end up even using an element that has been pitched to us in the past, we're going to credit the person with a story credit, which is very honorable and a very cool thing to do. So, and you're right, the very final episode of season 4 is usually an in-house thing, especially when Robert Hewitt Wolf is the one writing it. And Ira Stephen Bear, who is the showrunner.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like they probably took a couple elements that were pitched to them because they already kind of had the overarching story of what's going on. And then this gentleman pitched them some cool ideas. I mean, this is just a guess. Or maybe he pitched the entire episode and they're like, that's perfect for the 4th season, end of the 4th season, whatever it
Right.
was. And this guy,
Right.
I'm just looking him up. He had this one episode story by on Deep Space Nine, and he has one story by episode for Star Trek Voyager, False Prophets, also in '96. So that was a good year for him.
Yeah. He double dipped. So I didn't recognize that Les Landau directed this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So there were certain elements of it that just the idea of going down to this pool, because I was wondering where it was shot, and when they had the over the shoulder kind of looking out into the water behind Sisko and Bashir, I was thinking, where is that? Was that a green screen? Is that actually on location and they just altered the texture of the film and the colors of the backlight? So I was wondering, which one of the two that I was looking at.
Yeah, it seemed like a green screen kind of thing, but I mean, that's what I assumed. But I did find it, speaking of, while we're talking about this planet here, I mean, there are a lot of really interesting things. Number one was that they're just on this tiny little island, right? Whereas I think when they visited the planet before, they were like more on like a coastline because they were able to go underground and find caves and go out and explore and do all these other things. But this time they landed on just this little nugget, just this little thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, we could be in the link for days. And Sisko says, we'll wait. And my first thought is, where are they going to poop? Like, you're going to, yeah, that was my first thought.
My first thought.
When Sisko says, we'll wait for days, I'm like, I feel like Bashir's first thought was, speak for yourself, dude. I got to poo at some point. I'm not just going to be like, you can't poop in the link.
Did they commit to that? They committed to waiting before they knew the space, like the size, the parameters of the space. I think they said they'll wait.
But then she said, no, she said it could be days, even weeks or something like that. And Sisko was like, we'll wait. And I was just, I looked right at Bashir, like, what are you gonna, Bashir's probably thinking like, what? We can't wait up in the Defiant? We can't just go.
Yeah. And not only that, but they didn't bring, for me, if I'm going to do a weight thing, then okay, we're going to bring our little tent, or some kind of little ration kit.
Some Cliff Bars, yeah. Water.
Cliff Bar, some nuts, some mixed nuts, trail mix, You're gonna set up a little fire. I don't know. You're gonna be prepared to be there for a while, so you'll bring some actual rations and stuff. Especially, when you saw how small that space was, it was like, okay, this is weird. and I would not wait there for days. But
I wouldn't either.
But in the overall of it, though, one of the things that I got that really resonated for me was the fact that the crew was so willing to do so much to be there for each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this was like people really being there for Odo. They could have easily written him off and said, all right, you know, your people want you. We're out of here. You deal with it. Call us if you need anything. But instead, they were like, no, we're going to sit here and we're going to be here. It's almost like somebody sitting by your bedside when you're terminally ill and, you know, spending the days in the hospital with you by your bedside instead of just like, all right, well, call me if anything goes wrong, you know, or good luck
Yeah.
in the hospital. So I thought that was just admirable of what Sisko and the rest of the crew does for Odo. Like they're actually risking their own lives because, you know,
Completely.
technically they are super vulnerable. They let themselves be basically blindfolded as a ship and led anywhere. They could have been led into a trap. They could have been, you know, surrounded by Jem'Hadar ships. So they took a big leap of faith with that.
Yeah, and also, or I'm kind of skipping around here, but I do want to also mention the moment between Quark and Odo when these guys are the cutest freaking guys. When Quark is like, oh, while you're gone, boy, my smuggling is going to go up 60%. It's going to be so great. Oh boy, while the cat's away, the mice will play. I can't hurry up and get out of here. And Odo's like, you know, I'll be back to get you. And so Quark gets serious. He says, so you will be back. And he says, count on it. And it's just, and then Quark says, I will. And you know, Quark is just being such a little sweetie in that scene. It's just adorable. I love it. Really good writing, really good acting there.
There were a lot of moments like that in this episode, and I don't want to credit Ira and his team because they're so good at bringing these moments to life in these ways. And the other time I remember, for example, was Garak in the opening scene when he's initially bringing Odo down there. You know, Garak has got this master plan, you know, to hook him up, and the interplay between them. I think Odo says something. The next time you call me, it better be for a crime. You know, it better be to report a crime or something. And then and Garak's line is just perfect. His comeback was perfect. He's like, "Well, now that you mention it, I just witnessed a crime."
That was one of the coolest. That I wrote that down too. I was like, there's so many lines that I've forgotten. And that, you know, and some of those, that's a crime that I forgot that line because he's like, now that you mention it, I believe I just witnessed a crime. And I was like, oh, ooh.
What a comeback. What a comeback.
Big win. Yeah.
Big win. And I just love it. I just love the dialogue. There was another moment there in this episode with Worf and Dax. And I think Worf says, "Is she always this?"
He says, like, did her previous host argue this much? And he goes, he was worse. And Dax says, "Oh, thanks. I think."
Yeah, thanks for the compliment. I think, right, or something like that. So the way they write those scenes to me is just makes it golden. It's just this subtle conflict, this air of trickery. Even when Garak is asking Sisko to join in on the fun, right? Sisko's like, you know, the reason for him there is because he's such a great bullshitter. Just go and come along and use your BSing to entertain Odo, and that is in itself is just is a fantastic kind of reason for Sisko to come to the conclusion that Garak needs to come along. You know, I just like that.
Right. They're basically saying we're going to pull out all the stops to save this guy, even if that means letting on a Cardassian just to keep his mind stimulated and keep him motivated to stay alert. And of course, Garak loved the idea. I got the quote actually here. He says, "Just give me a seat next to Odo's bed, and I promise you, I'll conjure up enough innuendos, half-truths, and bald-faced lies about my so-called career in the Obsidian Order to keep the constable distracted for days. If there's one thing Cardassians excel at, it's conversation."
Yes.
Ah, what a magical line. And of course, the way Garak delivers it.
The way he delivers
like
it.
honey. It's perfect.
It's perfect. And I mean, there's just, when you match it with all of everybody's delivering it like honey. I mean, Quark and Odo, just their scenes, they're both hitting the notes exactly the way it should be hit. When Sisko, when he goes into his mode and hits the notes that he's supposed to hit, I just love it. I actually like the moment where Bashir calls Garak off. Garak sees the founder and he sees the opportunity to talk to her, and he's just waiting. He's been waiting for the moment.
Yeah.
And Bashir's like, "It can wait, Garak. It can wait." And it's just really good writing. Once again, I mean, they could have just let him approach her at that moment, but instead they pulled back on it a little bit.
Which does bring us to when Garak actually does speak with the founder, and that was a devilishly good. It's like, I can't think of the right word, but it really cut deep. She basically eviscerated Garak and his hopes, but also gave us insight into the changelings, where she's like, not only are they dead, but you're dead. All of you are dead. The Cardassians are over the second you attacked us. And she said it with such contempt. You know what I mean? Like, with just such like, you don't mean anything to me right now. That's what I put in my notes. Like an exterminator. Like they want to exterminate the Cardassians. Like they're bugs, they're vermin, they're just going to wipe them out. It's delicious.
And what else is also delicious is the way Andy Robinson, responds in that moment when he gets that information. He says something like, "How delightful to meet you, or it was such a pleasure to talk to you." The way he says that, even when he's receiving that kind of information, he still maintains his his aura of suspicion or ambiguity, that you just don't know what he's up to, right?
Right, but he definitely does react, he kind of does like a, he does like to show a little reaction, but then compose himself and be diplomatic again, or like sneaky again. Like, he's thinking like, he does it a lot with his eyes too. Like, he'll kind of like look to the side, like, and when he does that, he's thinking, I got to make a few phone calls right quick. But let me finish this conversation here. But I got to make a couple phone calls.
Yes. Like, that's some information that I have used for. So he is so good at playing those moments. But I have to say that the founder was as cold as I've ever seen anybody, and that includes Kai Opaka.
Kai Wynn, yeah.
Kai Wynn, yeah. She when she delivers that line to him, that's as cold as I've ever seen any character say something to somebody. Like not only are they dead, but you're dead.
Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion. You sealed your fate. Why are we even having this conversation?
And I really don't even want to take the time to explain it to you, but I want to just kill you right now with these words, so that your bubble is completely burst and that you have no hope for any future.
Right.
So
she wants nothing to do with him or any Cardassians. but she still has the tiniest little bit of want to hurt him or teach him a lesson enough, just enough for her to be like, you know what, if you really want to know, let me be as cold as ice and just rip you apart right now. Because, she could have just been like, get him away from me, Jem'Hadar, but she actually wanted a tiny bit, like there was a little bit of sadism in there. Like she wanted to be like, you know what, I may enjoy this just a tiny bit, just to, flex, just to give a little flex,
Oh yeah, no, she enjoyed it. I think she said, "You're Cardassian, right?" And there was like, like she's like calling him out, like real stoic, like, well, you would understand what I'm talking about.
Mm.
I'm going to let you know that you guys made the worst mistake of your lives, and this is what's in store for you.
Mm-hmm. Tell your friends.
Have a nice day. We'll never talk again. Bye.
Right. And this of course leads us to another really good scene. I mean, there are some great moments for Garak, which is when Worf catches Garak trying to basically destroy the Founders' entire homeworld and existence. And I don't know about you, but my first thought was, ooh, you done messed up now, Aaron, or whatever. like, oh boy. But then when he starts talking, you go, he's right. He's totally right, isn't he?
Yeah, I wrote the same thing down in my notes. I says, does Garak have a point? Does Garak have a valid point?
Totally, yeah.
But what was interesting in his monologue there was a time when he says, "Yes, they'll die." Sisko and Bashir, he was talking about, and so will we. So he knew that this was also a suicide mission.
Right.
So it wasn't like he was just willing to risk other people's lives, right, and then run away cowardly. He was actually willing to die himself for this.
Right, which shows that how good his intentions are. He's not doing it because he just hates the Founders and wants to kill people. He's doing it because he's saying, yes, we'll all die, but it is worth it to save the entire Alpha Quadrant. And you realize that for one of the first times ever, Garak is trying to save the world. He's trying to save the universe. He's trying to do something for the greater good of people around the quadrant that he's never even met. He's actually being a hero in his mind. Really, it was really good insight on Garak. It was kind of the first time that just out of nowhere, he's trying to risk everything to, for the greater good.
Yes, and you see, because Garak is always pretty much, at least from the most part, he comes across as a person who's motivated by his own self gain, right? So it's all about what do I get out of it? What does it mean to me? How can I use this for my own advantage?
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular instance, yes, he actually shows that he has this ability to think outside of himself and think for the greater good and what is, the best thing or the right thing to do. Now, it brought up such a great question, because you think about these kinds of things, if you could go back in time and, for example, take Hitler out, would you be justified in doing so? Wouldn't you say, hey, I'm saving this many millions of lives, and yeah, I'll be a murderer, or I'll be convicted, or I'll get killed in the process. But
yeah.
But the world doesn't suffer.
Right. But a gigantic butt there.
Right. So Garak has a point, actually, because I almost wanted him to be successful at his intent,
The show would kind of be over, but hey, actually we do have to jump to our break right now, but let's talk about this a little bit more on the other side, because there's a lot to this, and it was a really powerful moment. And I think it did the same thing to both of us, where we're kind of like,
yeah,
you're right, Garak. So we'll take a super quick break and we'll be right back on the seventh rule.